And Rich likes to say that, well, you know, the only one that was in the Attorney General's office. Well, he's only in there for 14 or 15 months. He was the solicitor, but he supervised himself and one other person or maybe two people. And does he have a great skill set? I'm not being critical of the skill set, but that's a specific area. What we need in many ways to be Attorney General is what you have to have when you're a United States Attorney. You have to have a generalist, you know, one that has run an office, you know, that's made personnel decisions, that's managed systems and led attorneys and things of that nature. Rich doesn't have that experience. No one in this race has led a public law enforcement body office other than myself. Rich's office is 130 people. By his own admission, it's the smallest office in state government. There's 13 or 1,400 people in the Attorney General's office. And there's nobody in the race other than myself when I oversaw 7,300 people in 3 states that has anything close to that. So, you know, I think when you look at that, when you look at the fact, and again, you know, Rich Cordray is a very bright guy. I'm not taking shots at him. I want you to understand that. I try to, and I know he tries to be as collegial as we can with each other in a very difficult race. But he's never prosecuted a case. He's never had a jury trial. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think he's ever had a trial to the court. He's been an appellate specialist, and he's a very good one and a very bright one. But we need to have an Attorney General that on day one, you know, knows where the grand jury room is, knows what a grand jury is all about, has presented cases to the grand jury. Rich likes to talk about how he's going to go after Wall Street. That seems to be his mantra the last week or week and a half. Maybe he's reading the polls better than I am, but that all of a sudden the integrity of the Attorney General's office is no longer his #1 priority. It's become going after Wall Street. Well, guys, let me just tell you, you know, having been a federal prosecutor, and I was the prosecutor that in fact investigated and prosecuted the home state savings and loan debacle back in the mid-'80s, late '80s, and some of us that have gray hair can remember that. The rest of you probably read about it. But, you know, I know what's involved in that. I'm the only person, if what he truly says is correct, we need to be going after Wall Street, and I'll talk about that in a minute, then there's only one person in this race has ever done that, that's ever prosecuted, investigated and prosecuted major economic crime, and it's me. Having said that, a lot of that's just populist rhetoric. I mean, sure, it's going to win you votes and it's popular, but the bottom line is the United States Attorney in the Southern District of New York, who has the primary responsibility for the jurisdiction over Wall Street, is going to be the person that's going to handle those prosecutions. The only kind of prosecutions you're going to see here in the state of Ohio are acts and actions involving Wall Street that occurred here. Now, what I can do, and nobody else in this race has been able to do, if we're going to use that Wall Street analogy, is that I set forth, I participated in task forces not only within the state of Ohio, but outside the state of Ohio on a regional basis. You know, when we had a few years ago, and mercy, I'm sorry I say a few years, it just seems a few years ago to me, but it's really been 20, 25 years. There was a serial killer that was on the loose in the mid-1980s that had killed a number of people here in Ohio, and then ultimately went to Indiana and committed a series of murders, and then went to Chicago and created murders. And then the question became, and I was an assistant United States attorney at that time, but I was given the primary authority for coordinating the case. The question became, where are we going to prosecute this person? And so I set up a meeting in Chicago, and we brought in prosecutors from 3 states, and we sat down and we looked at all the cases, and we evaluated the strengths and weaknesses of the case, and we made a determination as to where the best venue was to prosecute that case. And we ultimately did that. It was not in Ohio, it was in Indiana, because that was in the best interest of all the citizens of the United States at that time. The same thing may very well happen in the context of this Wall Street. To the extent that the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York cannot, will not prosecute, or has no jurisdiction, then there's going to probably need to be a great deal of coordination amongst attorneys generals from different states and amongst their staffs to try to get together to decide where best to bring these prosecutions. Rich, Mr. Owen, neither one of them have any experience doing that. I have, and I did it for virtually all my time as a federal prosecutor. So when I'm talking about a comparison between Mark and Rich, I'm